Hey, Stephen here. Will and I are currently preparing for our next cruise, which will be in just a couple of weeks, and we were reflecting on how, when we cruise, there are certain things we're grateful to have learned along the way, and how some of those things have really changed since we took our first cruise back in 2015. We both work full-time jobs, so anything that saves us time and maybe even some money, we're very interested in. So we still experience those new cruise feelings, especially when booking a cruise line that we've not sailed with before, and we'll be doing that this year actually. So we're always looking for new tips and tricks when booking a new cruise. So we thought with a new year and several upcoming cruises, let's put together the top 10 things we wish we knew when we booked our first cruise and make sure it reflects cruising today in 2024. Oh, and if you're new here, we have a passion for travel, especially cruising. So we bring you with us so you can see what the various cruise vacations and cruise lines are all about to help you decide if you'd like to take a cruise, to compare your options and provide some tips along the way. Or you can just join us, follow along as we have some fun while we explore as many different destinations and experiences as we can. Now, let's get started with what we think are the top 10 things you should know if you're taking your first cruise in 2024. Or maybe you're a returning cruiser just looking for a few tips. Be sure to stick around until the end for our bonus tip, which is probably the most important one of all, whether you're a new cruiser or not. And we'll let you know what cruise we're boarding next. All right, number one, the importance of choosing the cruise line. Okay, so when you're preparing to embark on your first cruise, one of the key decisions to make is selecting the right cruise line. You'll want to try your best to choose one that aligns with your preferences and those of your traveling companions. Now, cruise lines vary widely in their offerings, with some catering exclusively to adults, others being family friendly, and the majority of the mainstream lines that fall somewhere in between. Opting for an adults-only cruise like Virgin Voyages will help ensure an atmosphere suitable for couples, solo travelers, or those seeking a more mature but still fun experience. On the other hand, family-friendly cruise lines provide an array of activities, amenities, and entertainment suitable for all ages, whether you're traveling with children or not, but especially for those who do have children traveling with them. Now, we've been on adults-only cruises and many family-friendly cruises, for example with Royal Caribbean, and with very few exceptions, the family-friendly atmosphere has not deterred us from sailing with them, or ever feeling like there wasn't enough offered for us if I'm traveling solo or if we're traveling as a couple. Now, there are many different sizes of cruise ships, ranging from smaller, older ones to the big mega ships. Perhaps you see yourself on a quieter, older ship where the itinerary and ports are more important, or perhaps you want lots of onboard activities. The options are almost endless. Now, your preference for the type of onboard ambiance, the entertainment options, and amenities offered by different cruise lines is subjective, so I recommend doing a little bit of research on each, whether it's here on YouTube or through various vlogs, especially in talking to a travel agent who can give you a general idea of each. Then, whatever you feel is the best fit is likely the best one for you. There's only one way to find out. With just a little bit of research ahead of your first cruise, you can help ensure that it will align with your expectations and the composition of your travel party. Now, keep in mind things like mobility and accessibility options if traveling with somebody who requires mobility assistance, for example. Along with the cruise line itself, deciding the duration of your cruise can be important. There's lots of different options, from 2 to 3 night weekend type cruises to the longer traditional 7-night cruise or longer. Traditionally, the recommendation is to start with a 7-night cruise because it's really the best way to experience all that a cruise vacation has to offer. But it can be a bit of a commitment to try a full 7-day cruise for something you don't even know you're going to like. So if you do choose a short sailing for your first cruise, just keep in mind that it can potentially have a bit of a different crowd. Some cruise lines will cater their short cruises to more of a party atmosphere. So just keep this in mind when you're looking at how the cruise line treats or markets their shorter cruises to make sure you're choosing a sailing that fits with your expectations. If you're looking for a party cruise, these may be just the ones for you. All right, number 2, choosing your cruise cabin and price category. Once you have an idea of what cruise line you think is best to start with, then you should consider what cruise ship cabin would suit you best. Now, this may seem like a bit too much just to go on vacation, but with just a few small considerations, this can make a huge difference in your overall experience. There are a few different trains of thought when it comes to choosing a cruise cabin. Firstly, you can approach it in the sense that you'll potentially mainly sleep and shower in your cruise cabin. And otherwise, you're going to be out of the cabin, taking in everything that the ship and the ports have to offer. In this sense, a suitable and more cost-effective option would be an inside cabin, where having additional views and some outdoor space is less important. On the other hand, being able to open a door, get fresh air, and take in the views of the ocean, and to sail away from the different ports, may be just the cabin for you. You must also consider the setup of the room based on its occupancy. If you're sailing solo or as a couple, a standard cabin that sleeps 2 people is likely more than enough. But if you have children, you have to look at the differences between cabins that have a pull-out sofa bed versus beds that pull down from the ceiling or wall, known as Pullman beds. You'll want to consider what option is best for you depending on who will be sleeping in what bed. Another consideration is whether you are okay with an adjoining cabin. Just like many hotel rooms, you can get cabins that have a door that goes between your cabin and the cabin next to it. If you're booking 2 cabins that are adjoined because you have a group traveling, that's one thing. But if not, you're going to have strangers next door, and in many cases that means less noise insulation and you may be able to hear your neighbors a little bit more. If that's something you think will bother you, consider opting for a cabin that's not adjoined to another. Another quick tip with this is when choosing your cabin, have a look at the deck plans, either online or with your travel agent, and try to ensure you're surrounded by other cabins. If you're at all sensitive to noise, you don't want to be under a public area like the pool deck or above an entertainment venue like the theater or nightclub. So surrounding yourself with other cabins is often the best bet. Now, if none of these are priorities for you, the best option may be a guaranteed cabin, where you leave it to the cruise line to assign you your cabin as you get closer to your sail date. There's no flexibility, but it is the cheapest option, whether you choose a guaranteed inside cabin, ocean view, or balcony. We have chosen our own cabins and done guaranteed cabins in the past, but with a bit of a sensitivity to noise, I do prefer to choose our own. We also prefer a balcony, but depending on the cruise, I'd much rather stay in an inside cabin than not cruise at all on the sailing that we want. Okay, number 3, know what to pack. Now, if you've looked at cruising at all, you've probably seen that there's almost an entire world dedicated to packing for a cruise. And it's true, there are all kinds of tips and things to consider when packing for a cruise, and I'll definitely have a full video for that. But for the purposes of booking your first cruise, there's just a few things worth mentioning right away. Firstly, don't overpack. I suggest compiling everything you think you need and get rid of at least a quarter of it. Look at your itinerary and decide what you need based on your activities, not just the number of days that you're sailing. For example, in a single day, you may get up, have a shower, have breakfast, go on an excursion for a few hours, come back to the ship, shower again because you've been out having fun all day. Then you'll participate in some activities on the ship. Then you might have to get ready for dinner, where depending on where you're dining, you may need to change again into something more formal. And after that, you may have some evening activities where you want to be more casual. You can change a lot. Versus a sea day where you get up, decide to lounge by the pool for a bit, and maybe not have to change much at all until it's time to go for dinner. Depending on your cruise line, you may have laundry facilities available or the option to send your laundry for cleaning. Now, sending your laundry can be a bit costly on board, but it is an option if you want to pack even lighter, especially on a longer sailing, let's say 10 days or longer. Also, do not bring a surge protected power strip. You'll want to bring options to be able to charge multiple devices, typically your phone or tablet. But if the power extender has a surge protector, it'll likely get confiscated when you go through security. Another big no-no includes bringing anything with a heating element, so typically irons, steam irons, hair straighteners. These are likely on the list, but you'll want to check with your specific cruise line about those restricted items. Also, there will typically be a maximum amount of wine you can bring on board per passenger per cabin. You can also typically bring water or soda, but keep in mind that you'll have to keep those items with you when you get on board while you wait for your cabin. So if you've got a few hours on board, you likely don't want to be carrying around a case of water when you want to be starting your cruise vacation next to the pool or dining in one of the venues. Now, really quick, if you find tips like this useful, please consider subscribing to our channel so we can continue bringing you more in the future. That brings us to our 4th tip. Pay attention to what you pack in your Embarkation Day carry-on bag. Along with your main packing, you'll want to consider what you keep with you after you drop your main luggage off at the cruise port with the porters, because it will get delivered to your cabin later in the day. So since you will only have with you what you have in your carry-on, be sure to pack any essentials like medication, your ID, your passport, and other valuables, along with anything you'll need if traveling with small children. We also recommend putting in a change of clothes and a swimsuit so you'll be able to utilize the pools or change for dinner if your luggage arrives a bit late to your cabin. All right, tip number 5 is the importance of arriving at your cruise port early. Now, we're not fortunate enough to live all that close to a cruise port. Our nearest is about an 8-hour drive away. So, if driving to a cruise port, we always go the day before. And that's what this tip is really about. Arrive at your cruise port early, especially if you're driving from a further distance or in most cases, flying. Even if you don't have an embarkation time until late morning or early afternoon, there's always that risk that if you fly in the morning, that a delay in your flight or car trouble along the way will cause you to miss your cruise. Whenever possible, we always recommend getting there at least a day early. This prevents any stress and worrying about running into any unexpected problems, and allows you to get into vacation mode early. So when Embarkation Day comes, you're ready for that vacation. Okay, we're at number 6. Complete your muster drill ASAP. If you're going on your first cruise, the need to complete a muster drill is likely a new concept for you. But whether the cruise line you choose has a traditional in-person muster drill or a combination of an app-based and in-person check-in, the best thing you can do is complete that as soon as you get on board. Any delays in getting it completed will create a situation where the crew will have to repeatedly call for people to come and complete their muster drill. You don't want to be that person being called upon or the reason for any delays. If you can complete part of it within the cruise line app before you even board, that gives you a head start, and all you have to do is check in once you're on board. The quicker it's done, the quicker you can focus on starting your vacation. Now, number 7, onboard spending. A common question for first-time cruisers is how much are we going to spend once we're on board? Now, this is a very valid question, especially these days because cruise lines almost across the board are looking to increase the amount of onboard spending from their guests. That being said, ultimately, at least with the mainstream cruise lines, the ability to sail and not spend a significant amount of money on board does still exist. However, when sailing for your first time, the reality is you're looking to experience all that a cruise vacation has to offer, whether that be some extra pay specialty dining, excursions at the various ports, or other forms of entertainment while on board. Most of the cost associated with these extras like drink and dining packages can be booked ahead of time, and that can help budget what you're going to spend in addition to your cruise fare. Keep in mind that these are optional, so what you'll want to purchase is individual to everyone. The earlier you book onboard activities, the cheaper they will be. Booking ahead of time will always be cheaper than buying anything once you're on board. The other benefit to this is you can stagger these purchases in the months ahead of your cruise so that you don't have one big bill at the end. Okay, tip number 8, your port and excursion considerations. Now, let's face it, one of the unique aspects about cruising that draws in a lot of people is the fact that you can wake up in a different location every day. This leads to the question of what do you do when you arrive at these ports and you have just an allotted amount of time at each. Not only what do you do, but the reality of what it will cost. There's one area that's worth comparing, especially if you're cruising for the first time, and that's whether to book excursions through the cruise line or through an independent provider. The reality is, booking through the cruise line will be more expensive. However, there is value in knowing that the cruise line provided excursions guarantee you'll make it back to the ship, or they'll wait for you if there's a delay. Regardless of what type of excursion you take, please, please, please remember, you should always aim to get back to the ship at least 1 hour before the all aboard time. This gives you a little buffer just in case there's any delays. We've cut it close before and it's not a good feeling thinking that you might not make it back on the ship in time. Now, in many ports, there may not be a reason to book an excursion. Being able to explore ports independently, either on foot or perhaps a hop-on, hop-off bus tour, can be a great way to see lots at your own pace, without the need to be touring in a large group if that's not your thing. Our rule of thumb when booking an excursion in a port, especially one that we've not been to, is to book a short excursion, no more than 2 or 3 hours max. We like to book it early. That way, even if the excursion turns out to not be exactly as we had hoped, we then have time to explore the port independently when we return. But again, regardless of how you spend your day, set some alarms or reminders for when you should head back to the ship just to make sure you get there on time. Now, there are some other excursion options out there like Viator that are cheaper and now have some guarantees to get you back to your ship on time. We haven't used those third-party guarantees to get you back to the ship yet, so just make sure you check all the fine print for those excursions. Now, this is where you'll also want to consider paying attention to ship time. Sometimes ship time changes based on the time zone you're in, but sometimes not. The all aboard time is always based on ship time, so be sure to change your watch, your phone, or whatever you're using to match ship time. Okay, we're already at number 9, the dining. Now, navigating onboard dining on a cruise ship for the first time involves understanding just a few general rules that can contribute to an enjoyable onboard dining experience. Now, most cruise lines operate on a set schedule for the main dining rooms, typically an early and late dining time, providing you with an assigned time and table. However, some ships also offer flexible or anytime dining options. Allowing more freedom in choosing when and where to dine, you may still have to make a reservation to get in at your preferred time. Now, buffet-style dining is still a common feature, and it's typically more casual and is available over the course of several hours, giving you more flexibility. Dress codes are still a thing on some cruise lines, but generally speaking, formal dress is reserved for designated formal dining nights, which your cruise line will specify for you. It's not mandatory to attend formal dining nights because you can head to the buffet or other casual dining venues if you choose. There are some luxury cruise lines and lines like Cunard where there's more structured dress codes both for dining and certain times of day, but each cruise line will have those specified for you. So if you're not interested in formal dress, there are plenty of options, especially amongst the mainstream cruise lines. While some dining venues like the main dining room and buffet are included in the cruise fare, specialty restaurants may incur you an additional charge. Reservations for these specialty options are typically required, and like mentioned earlier, like most things, it's cheaper to book those specialty dinings before you board. Okay, keep watching for that bonus tip, but now number 10, tipping. The world of cruise line tipping is an ever-evolving thing, but here's a few key things you should know as someone considering their first cruise, or if you're early in your cruising experience. First, this applies to most cruise lines, especially the main cruise lines like Royal Caribbean, Carnival, Norwegian, the automatic daily gratuity. Now this will show up on your invoice. It's typically a set amount, for example, $18 per day per passenger. On top of that, you will be charged a gratuity for any onboard spending. That could be somewhere in the range of 18%, whether that be on beverages, specialty coffee, and dining. This is important to know because you'll often be presented opportunities to leave additional gratuities when you make purchases on board. So just so you know, you can typically look at your receipt and see that you've already paid, for example, 18% gratuity, and then you can decide whether you want to leave even more, knowing that you don't have to. But like anything, if you feel that the service or situation warrants an extra gratuity, by all means. Next, most cruise lines will provide an opportunity for you to pay for your gratuities in advance when you pay for your cruise fare. This can be an advantage where you'll not have to pay a large gratuity amount at the end of your cruise, but there are times when the daily gratuity amount gets increased by the cruise line. Now, typically, if you pay for your gratuities ahead of time and there's an increase afterwards, you only have to pay what you paid in advance, and the increase will not apply to you. It can potentially save you a few dollars if that becomes a reality before you're sailing. Also, most onboard gratuities are charged via your onboard spending account, but it's important to keep in mind that there are a few instances where you'll want to have some cash available. For example, the porters who take your luggage and ensure it gets to the ship on time, they'll take cash. Also, if you choose to leave additional gratuities for your stateroom attendant, or perhaps the waiters in the dining room, these are usually best provided in cash as well. Again, these are optional additional gratuities, but just know that it is good to have some cash available in those instances. This also applies if you have excursions where there's a bus driver or tour guide whom you may want to leave a small gratuity for in appreciation of their service. Now I know that seems like a lot to consider just to go on vacation, but I promise you these are just a few small considerations that if you have them ahead of time, can have a huge impact when it comes to your actual vacation, when you will have a whole lot less to think about. All right, now for that bonus top thing you should know. That is the importance of considering the use of a travel agent. Yes, this sounds simple enough, but maybe you've seen just how easy it is to book your cruise yourself on the various cruise line websites. But trust me, whether it's finding the best price, arranging travel to and from your cruise port, or most importantly, helping to figure out all the little nuances with each cruise line, especially if you run into any unexpected problems, a travel agent is the way to go. Typically, they don't cost you anything, and they can help find better deals and find promotions that you can use during your cruise. All right, there you go. If you're considering your first cruise, or you've already booked your first cruise, there are lots of other tips and things to look out for to help ensure a smooth first cruise experience. So if there's something specific that I've not mentioned here today, or that you have questions about, please go ahead and leave them in the comments below, and I'll either get back to you directly, or if there's a theme that comes up, we can put that in a future video. Until then, we are continuing to grow our little travel community here, and we would love and appreciate if you would join us simply by subscribing to our channel. It costs you nothing, but it really helps us out. Okay, we're gonna go put all these tips to use ourselves as we prepare for our next cruise, which will be aboard Odyssey of the Seas in just a couple of weeks. So we hope you'll join us, and we'll see you in an upcoming video.
In the meantime, check out one of these videos.